Hi, so in this video, we're going to look at some problems that come with AI integration in an educational context and the extent to which open source solutions exist. So the platform that I will be demonstrating was created by Ryan Tannenbaum, and you will have his contact information in the email if you wish to get in touch with him. So you are probably aware of the many problems that come with AI integration in our schools. The first one, or a well-known one, being how many tools already exist, with new ones coming up every day. And with so many options come a number of other issues, such as the cost, obviously, that is associated with so many subscriptions that have to be purchased. And sort of a trade-off here between the quality and the cost. Most of those tools follow the same model where you have access to a number of features, or sometimes you have access to their what would be otherwise paid features but for free. If you want to extend your use, or if you want to access their best performing tools, then you have to pay for it. Another issue, obviously, is the more tools you have, the more complex the training becomes. Right? If you manage to have just one platform, then you could be very efficient in your training, train all of your faculty at once. If you have many different tools, then you need to differentiate much more your training. Data protection is obviously paramount in schools, because oftentimes we process student data. Whenever we use an external provider, we take a risk, or we rely on how good their data protection is. So can open source be a solution or part of the solution? To answer that question, we first need to explain a little bit what open source is, just in case you're not familiar with this concept. So open source is something that existed way before AI, and that has to do with computer software. And essentially, so there are different definitions and almost different levels to what extent something can be open source. But the basic, or some of the basic ideas are, first, the code, the source code of an open source software is made publicly available. So you can see what is behind the tool that you're using. That would not be the case for a closed source tool, which is proprietary. So let's say ChatGPT, for instance, we do not know what the code is, how exactly it was trained, what the weights of the model are. This is all sort of the secret sauce of an AI. For open source models or tools, we know everything. We have access to everything. So the code is publicly available. Second, they are released under their number of licenses that they can be released under, and they can be slightly different. But essentially, they are free for anyone to use. Now, free is in quotation marks here. Free doesn't mean that it costs no money necessarily. It means you are allowed to, you have the right to use it. And usually the way it works for AI tools is the tool itself is free. There is no money, no cost involved. But if you use a paid model, so let's say if you were to use GPT-4, for instance, then you would use and you would pay just for that use, but not for the tool itself. Third, because the code is made publicly available, there is a process of ongoing development of those tools, and this is sort of crowdsourced, it's collaborative. Anybody in the world can go and offer their own version of the tool that might fix some issues with the source code, or that might add new features. And finally, in the AI field, open source applies to both the apps or the tools and to the models themselves. So to give you an example, just a few days ago, Meta, the company behind Facebook, released version 3 of their Llama open source large language model. It is open source, and just a few hours later, or maybe the following day, someone here, you can see on the Hugging Face, released a slightly different version. What they did was they fine-tuned the model so that it would speak French. right? So essentially, Facebook or Meta releases the model. Anybody can do whatever they want with it. This person decided to train it so it would speak French and released that fine-tuned version. So the platform that I want to demonstrate is called Engage, and again, it was created by Ryan Tannenbaum. And the reason why these kind of platforms, of AI platforms, are could be a solution is first because many, not all, but many of the AI tools that will be useful for educators, starting with students and teachers, are what we call wrappers. And what a wrapper is, if you can imagine the large language model, let's say GPT 3.5 as the candy, what the tool is something that wraps around, and essentially usually it is just a prompt that is going to tell the model how to behave. So if I show you here one example, you might be familiar with Magic School. It's one of the most used AI tools in schools. They have all those different tools that are available, and each of them is really a wrapper. So my guess is they run on GPT 3.5, at least for the free tier, and each of those, so let's say the text summarizer, or the text translator, or the text leveler, all of those are simply probably a fairly short prompt and a neatly designed user interface that leverages the large language model. And the reason why that's important is because those wrappers, they are fairly easy to replicate. But what is not possible for a school to replicate is the large language model, or at least one that would be as high performing as GPT-4. So for that, we rely on the companies or the organizations that create those language models. The wrappers, we can very much replicate them, and by doing so, making them exactly what we need for our students, for our specific school context. And that is what an open source platform would allow us to do. Second, the advantage of an open source platform is the cost is going to be a fraction of what a paid wrapper would be. So you have here an example of how much it actually costs to use GPT-4 or GPT-4 Turbo. You can see when it processes your inputs, it's $10 for 1 million tokens. And then when it generates text, it's $30 for 1 million tokens. So a token may be a unit you're not familiar with. It's essentially a part of the work, whether in your prompt or in the text that the AI generates. So to give you another idea, if each of my students or teachers uses a tool to generate 1,000 words per day, and if we have about 200 school days in the year, then the actual cost is $6. That is how much it should cost to use the tool. Anything beyond that, we are paying for the wrapper, which is fair because the Magic School as a company needs to be able to function. But if we can replicate that for free, and by doing so making the tool even better for our schools, then there is really no reason, at least for some of those tools, to not use open source platforms. So I will demonstrate in a second the Engage platform, and you will see that it's fairly easy to create, to recreate tools, AI tools with Engage. It's basically a simple drag and drop interface. So it's very easy to use, but the flows that you create, they can be as complex as you want. So you could create very complex flows if you wanted, but the entry point is sort of low and easy to access. On this platform, you can decide to use more expensive state-of-the-art model like Claude 3, GPT-4, etc. Or you can decide to use a cheaper open source model. Depending on the use case, you might not need the most performing model, right? For some tools that generate sort of very simple chat exchanges between teachers and AI, a lower performing, cheaper model might be enough. If you are analyzing data, for instance, or writing code, you might want a more performing model. And a last option that you have, which I think for the future has a lot of potential, is with these kinds of platforms like Engage, you could not only run it on an open source model, you could even run the platform itself and the model locally. What that would mean really is you would have on your hardware at school the model downloaded, and that's what you would use to sort of fuel your tools with AI. That would be the highest level of safety because any data that you share with the AI stays on your hardware. It never leaves the campus. It actually never wears the computers that run um, the the tool and the model. You could also use an external provider such as Amazon Web Service, where you can have very high levels of protection on your data. So if you decide to use an open source model, you can see that the cost becomes a fraction of what it is when you use GPT-4, for instance. Grok is one interface you can use to access open source models. And you can see, so this is the cost for Llama 2. I don't have the cost for Llama 3 just yet, but assuming the cost of Llama 3 is sort of similar, you can see that for 1 million tokens, the cost is not even $1. So it's 30 times cheaper than GPT-4, for instance. So I want to share with you a few examples of what you could do on a platform like Engage, and then I also want to show you the back end and how to create similar flows. So one example that is being used actually at our school at ASP is this understanding by design unit planner. So it would look like any other AI tool, really. You can see it is asking me for a subject. So I'm going to say this is for economics. The grade level, I'm going to say this is a grade 11 class. The topic is, let's say, globalization. And if this was a real use case, I would want to be more specific. Maybe I give a specific learning objective or some context about the variability of my students. Actually, let me say some of my students are Spanish speakers and English learners. And then it is going to run a prompt that we wrote, and that tells the AI, make sure to use those standards, the arrow standards that we align with, and then follow understanding by design. So give me a transfer goal, give me a set of questions. We provide our teachers with KUDs so they can create learning skills. It is going to give me a high quality grasp assessment. It is going to try and proactively think about potential barriers and potential solutions. So you can see here, it is giving me something about language proficiency, also about cultural perspectives. It is going to suggest a scope and sequence. And then, because we are an IB school, we also asked, give me ATL skills, suggest connections to TOK, and then connect to our core values at the school. So as you can imagine, you would not have this level of specificity, like a tool that speaks to your core values as a school, unless you have control over the prompt and over the tool itself. Now, I would not go ahead and just implement this unit plan as it is, just like any other AI tool. I would review the output and edit. We actually prompted the assistant to remind the teacher that they should do that. But that is a good example of a tool that we can run for a fraction of the cost of a paid tool, over which we have total control, and that is of high quality. That was one example, the understanding by design unit planner. Another one is this Swiss knife, which cuts through the wrappers. And what it does is, when you go on Magic School, for instance, all the tools are fairly similar. You can see that you have over 80 different tools. So for teachers, it becomes choice anxiety. Like how do I even navigate those 80 different tools? What this one is going to do is you have one tool to replace them all. So in this tool, the first question is going to be, what kind of AI tool do you need? So I'm going to say, let's say I need a text leveler, right? And when I input that, what the assistant does is it creates a fairly complex prompt that designs an AI assistant specifically with expertise in different reading levels and leveling text. Finally, the third tool that I want to share with you is an EAL tutor. And it is a good example because it's a good case study where a middle school teacher came to me and asked what AI tool they should use for their English learners to give them chances to interact with an AI that would give them exercises to learn about grammar, conjugation, etc. But it had to be on a specific topic, which was the unit that they were working on. And so I told this teacher, our best guess, probably best chance, is to design that ourselves, and we can do it as specific as you want for a fraction of the cost. So that's what we did with this EAL tutor. And as the student greets the assistant, uh, what the assistant does is it is going to give a variety of exercises. So you can see here it creates a fill in the blank, and it is going to adapt to the student's responses. So if the student gets it correct, it is going to ask a next harder question. If the student does not get it correct, which was the case here, it is going to give a bit of feedback. That could be a hint, that could be an explanation. If I get it wrong again, it is going to ask a more simple question. And it's going to go very much like the map test. It's going to go easier and easier to see where is my starting point, or harder and harder and see how far I can stretch my English skills. So the question is, well, how can you design such tools on Engage? And I want to show you how easy it is. For instance, by creating an assistant that does this, it's one of the use cases that my teachers are very excited about, giving students the opportunity to chat either with a historical figure or with an author. So as you can see, the platform is, as I said, drag and drop. So I'm going to need three elements here. One is a user interface that the student or the teacher is going to see. I need a prompt that is going to tell the AI what to do, and I need the AI to complete those tasks. So for the user interface, I'm going to choose just a chat box, and I need to connect that to the AI. Next, I need a prompt, and here I'm simply going to tell the AI act and respond as Herman Melville. Your goal is to help the students express and enrich their understanding of the novel. Obviously, in a real life case, my prompt would be a bit more specific than this, depending on what my unit is on, or my lesson, or my assessment. I might insist on specific aspects of author's choice, theme, plot, or whatever it is. So the input, I need to choose the chat box here. And then finally, I need to connect the prompt to the AI. So for the AI, I'm going to choose the prompt. I also need to select which AI I want to use. I could choose OpenAI. I could choose an open source model. I'm going to choose Anthropic, which I find to be at least the obvious model is the best. Haiku is very good too, and is a bit cheaper, but I'm going to choose Opus just for this demonstration. And I now have my flow. So I can go ahead and test it. As you can see, it even imitates the style, actually the written style of Herman Melville. They say, I just read Moby Dick, and I think that it is written after Ismail comes back. So I have this interpretation. And so, as I said, those flows, they can be very simple, they can be much more complex. So I mean, this one is not overly complex, but uh, to show you an example, this one has two different AIs, and what it is sort of an SLT assistant, where you, as a senior leadership team, you would share with this AI a change initiative that you have in mind, and you would have a first assistant do some research and look into what are good change management strategies to use, what are relevant models, what are relevant theories. And the second one is going to give you a step-by-step action plan based on these leading, widely accepted theories and models, but also unique to whatever specific information you gave about your context or your goals. So a little bit more complex flow, and I could make a flow even more complex than that. Now, what's important here is the end user, the student, the teacher, the administrator, uh, doesn't necessarily have to know how to technically design those flows. If they are interested in the technology, they can certainly learn how to do it. It's really not that complex. But if they do not have the time or the interest, which would be very understandable, all that matters is that you have someone on staff, someone in your IT department, someone who can translate whatever the user, teacher, the student, the administrator needs into a working flow that is designed specifically for this purpose and can be run very cheaply, for instance, with this platform. So I hope this was helpful. The last thing that I want to share with you is this opportunity. If you want to learn more, if you want to join other schools that are coming together to safeguard AI integration. And by safeguarding, we mean encouraging people to use it, schools to integrate it, providing guidance, but making sure this effort is safe as well. Then you can click on this link and simply express interest and become part of this community.